The learning target for this video is, I can correctly punctuate text evidence. I'm going to be really honest before I even get into this lesson today. This is one of the most important pieces that I'm going to give you some really direct teaching about in this literary essay, because it helps to make your ideas flow a lot smoother and they're a lot clearer for your reader. Okay, so we've talked already in class about this idea that our literary essay is going to have paragraphs. And those paragraphs are going to have some pretty consistent parts. They'll have a topic sentence in which you'll introduce the main idea that you're going to write about. They'll have text evidence, and those are words directly from the story. Your paragraph will have reasoning, which is important because it shows your thinking and is going to explain why the evidence matters. And then your paragraph will also end with a conclusion sentence, which is its job is to summarize the main ideas. Notice how the topic and conclusion sentence are both the bread of the hamburger, because their purpose is kind of the same, to introduce your topic or to summarize your topic. Usually these pieces will look relatively similar. Now, when I mention text evidence, I'm talking about using a direct quotation. So what that looks like for you as a reader is going into a short story or a book, opening up to a part that you want to talk about, and typing that word for word. Now, normally that might seem like copying. However, we as writers are going to do some important things to be sure that our reader knows that we're getting our quotation from a source. One of those things we'll do is we'll include quotation marks, and we'll also say the page number where we found that particular text evidence. Okay, so here's how this is going to look. I have 3 steps for you. If you're someone that likes to write things down in your notebook, this might be a time where you pause the video, go grab a notebook, and then kind of pause throughout so you can make sure that you're adding these steps to your notebook. Okay, so the first step is to make sure that you are choosing the most important part of a quote. Now, maybe I think this entire page is important. However, I want to pick just a section that I think really is the most important part. Okay, I can always kind of summarize what's happened up to that point, but I don't want to type a whole page directly from the text. I want to pick just the most important part. Then I'm going to put that important part in quotation marks. So you'll see in this first example, it says, she says, quotation mark, I see right away it's going to be one of the Dodge City scenes, quotation mark. You'll observe that in my other 2 examples as well. The quotation marks only go around the words right from the story. The next step, add words before your direct quotation to introduce what is happening. Here's sometimes what 6th graders do. They'll find a really good part of their story. They'll type that really good text evidence, and they just kind of like plop it in their paragraph. But we can't just do that. We need to put some words before our quotation to kind of set the scene, to explain what's happening, to maybe introduce the quotation. It also helps our work to flow a lot smoother. Okay, so for example, take a look. This one says, she says, comma, quotation, I see right away it's going to be one of those Dodge City scenes, quotation. Notice how the writer of this sentence included a she says to kind of give a little bit more context to the quote. Let's take a look at the second example. In fact, she says instead of talking, comma, quotation, I much rather knock you down and take my chances, quotation. It would have been weird if the author of this piece just put, I much rather knock you down and take my chances. We wouldn't have really had much context or much idea of what was happening. But they put these words before their quote to help kind of set the scene. Notice how there's also a comma to separate these introductory words from the quotation. The last step is to add a page number at the end of the sentence in parentheses. Now, this is going to feel kind of funny for some of us. Maybe you're going to want to put like the word page and then the number. Maybe you want to put like the little hashtag symbol and a number, but that's not correct. The only thing you need to do is put the number that you got this information from in parentheses. So if I, in my book, found this information on page 70, then in parentheses, I would put the number 70, and that's it. Now here's kind of the trickiest little step. The period is going to go at the very end of the sentence, just like normal. You've been putting periods at the end of sentences, basically probably since like kindergarten, maybe first grade, I don't know. But the period goes at the end of the sentence. Some of you are going to be very tempted to put a period here at the end of the text evidence, but you actually don't need a period there. The only period, the only end punctuation goes at the very, very, very end of your sentence. So even though this might look kind of funny, maybe it looks wrong to you, actually this is correct when we're doing this type of writing. Parenthesis, page number, period. So let me break this down for you. So I have this example that I showed you in class as well, and it reads, for example, comma, Will thinks that if he ever found a four-leaf clover, comma, quotation mark, he would hold the lucky clover tight in his hand, close his eyes, and wish she was so popular that he would never have to spend time with the other two again. Quotation mark, parentheses, 1, period. Now, hopefully in this example, you already noticed some of the parts that I just talked to you about. So in this first portion here, the whole purpose of this part, for example, Will thinks that if he ever found a four-leaf clover, is just to kind of introduce the quotation. So I'm not just plopping it in and walking away. I introduce my quotation to the reader. Then I need to add a comma to separate the introduction from the text evidence. The next thing I need to do is put quotation marks. Notice how there's quotation marks at the beginning and the end of this piece of text evidence. The next portion of this quote is to just type the words directly from the book or the story. Notice I only picked the most important parts. I didn't put a whole page of the story. I just took a little section. Then I put the page number in parentheses. And last but not least, I put a period at the very end. Notice how there's no period in between right here, even though I know that feels kind of funny, okay? These are the parts that every piece of text evidence should have in a literary essay. I'd like to model this for you one more time. So here I have a passage from The Fight, and I'm going to follow these 3 steps. So as I look at this passage right now, I want to use the part that says, the idea of fighting terrified me. It's right in this first paragraph here. So I'm not just going to plop that like in this passage and just walk away. I have to introduce it, remember. So maybe I'm going to say something like, when Will thinks about the fight, he thinks. So there's my introduction to my quote. The next thing I need to do is include a comma. Then I'm going to put a quotation mark. And I'm going to now put my words right from the story. So I'm going to put the idea of fighting, oops, not flighting, terrified me. Now I'm finished with my quote, so I'm going to put a quotation mark at the end. Here's where you're going to be tempted to put that period, but don't do it yet. The next thing that happens is a quotation mark, or a parenthesis, with the page number to close the parenthesis and put a period at the end. Okay, just like that every single time. Hopefully, this video has helped you understand how to better punctuate text evidence within your pieces of writing.